Raise your hand if you're overworked, overwhelmed, and too damn busy to do anything about it. Do you constantly feel worried, anxious, stressed, or plain overwhelmed? Like you can never fully relax? Maybe you're struggling to sleep or even find it hard to eat because of all the stress. If any of this sounds familiar, you might just be addicted to stress. And if that's the case, I've got the ultimate video series just for you. In this series, we're diving deep into the following questions. Are you addicted to stress? What exactly is stress addiction? What are the physical, mental, and behavioral signs of stress addiction? And how can you break free from stress addiction once and for all? This is just part 1 of a 3-part series right on this channel. So if you don't want to miss the rest, then hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Kayo. I'm a certified nutritionist and health coach specializing on chronic stress symptoms and preventing burnout. In this first part, we're going to talk about what stress addiction felt like to me and my personal story with it. We're going to understand what exactly stress, chronic stress, and the stress responses. And lastly, we're going to look into what stress addiction is and how it happens in the first place. And then in the next 2 parts, we're going to cover the signs of stress addiction, as well as how to stop stress addiction and recover from it. I would love to sit here and call myself the Queen of Zen, but oh boy, would that be a lie. For over 3 years now, I've been religiously tracking my habits. I've been practicing yoga, I've been meditating, I've been working out consistently, I've been journaling, I've been listening to positive affirmations, I've avoided caffeine, I hardly ever drink alcohol. And yet, despite all these healthy habits, I've still been getting that feeling, especially recently, that my life is spiraling just a little bit out of control. Now, to be fair, there are certain things going on in my life right now that I simply cannot change. And I've honestly just accepted that 2025 is going to be a very busy year for us. But that does not mean I have to make it more stressful than it already is. And it also definitely doesn't mean that I can't tackle this addiction to stress to ease some of that strain. So please don't get me wrong, I'm still figuring it out myself. But in this video series, I'm going to share everything I've learned about stress addiction so far. And hopefully we can tackle it together and keep each other accountable. So in the hopes that it's going to resonate with you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my backstory. I've always been very proud of my ability to juggle a ton of things all at once. And I would consider myself as someone who thrives on being productive. But recently, I've taken a step back and realized something. I find it extremely hard to relax, even on weekends. So when I would sit down for dinner after a really long day, I would still get a level of lingering anxiety, making it almost impossible to fully unwind. And when I was reading this book about high performance anxiety, which is a whole other topic for another video, that's when I had this big aha moment. I'd always know that in some way I had been creating this hectic lifestyle myself, but I never really understood why, which is when I realized that I was addicted to stress. Can you relate to feeling anxious or always kind of on edge even when things are calm? If so, please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your experiences. And trust me, we're not alone in this. Statistics show that the majority of women aged 20 to 44 report experiencing extreme stress. But instead of slowing down, most of us do the exact opposite. Our busyness is almost like a badge of honor, and we're proud of how much we can juggle all at once. Somewhere along the line, we also started equating stress with success, where it almost feels like the busier and the more stressful you are, the more successful you are. But being relentlessly busy is not something we should brag about. Chronic stress can really affect your health and well-being. On one end of the spectrum is those pesky colds that just won't go away, while on the other end, it gets much more serious, where chronic stress can be responsible for cancer, depression, heart disease, or even diabetes. And not to mention the unhealthy coping habits like overeating, smoking, drinking, or even substance abuse that some people revert back to when they're highly stressed. And something mind-blowing that I read the other day was that research shows that stress hormones can actually be passed from mother to baby during pregnancy, which can increase the child's risk of health issues like asthma or obesity later in life. So how much stress is too much? To answer that, we need to understand stress, chronic stress, and the stress response much more. Because if we're going to break free from it, we first need to understand what we're dealing with. So what exactly is stress? Well, at its core, stress is actually there to protect us. It's one of the body's ways to keep us safe from danger. Just like we have skin to protect us from physical harm and fear to keep us out of risky situations, stress is also one of those layers of defense. And back in the day, this was really useful. Imagine our ancestors being chased by a lion, for example. Stress would kick in, giving them that burst of energy that is needed to run for life. But the problem is that our bodies haven't evolved to tell the difference between life-threatening dangers like being chased by a tiger and modern-day stresses like a pile of emails or being stuck in traffic. And so to our brains, stress is stress, and the response is the exact same. And as a result, our bodies go into full fight or flight mode, even if that danger is just a looming deadline or a really long to-do list. So how does this stress response actually work? It all starts when your brain senses a threat, whether that is real or imagined. Within a split second, your adrenal glands pump out 3 main hormones: adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Adrenaline gives you that energy boost and increases your heart rate and blood pressure, all the things that you need to get ready to either run or fight. Then cortisol, often called the stress hormone, raises your blood sugar and boosts your brain's ability to use that blood sugar for energy. But what it also does is put all those non-essential functions on hold. So like digestion, your immunity, and even reproductive processes. It does that so your body can focus all its energy on dealing with the threat. Now, this response is actually genius when you think about it. It's your body's way of giving you superhuman strength and focus in those moments of danger. And in small doses, that whole process is really helpful. For example, have you ever noticed how you're most productive just before a deadline? That's that little burst of adrenaline and cortisol helping you out. But this is where it's going to get a little bit more complicated, because cortisol isn't just released when you're facing danger. You also need it for everyday functions. So normally, cortisol is high in the morning to give you that get up and go energy, and then gradually decreases throughout the day. And it should be hitting its lowest point at night to help you wind down and sleep. But when you're experiencing constant stress, this pattern gets thrown completely out of whack. And then instead of peaking in the morning and dropping at night, cortisol actually stays high all day long, even when it should be low. And then over time, this can actually flip the entire pattern altogether, leaving you feeling exhausted in the morning and then wide awake at night. Sound familiar? That classic tired but wired feeling is a very typical sign of chronic stress messing with your cortisol rhythm. And if you keep pushing even beyond that without giving yourself a break, your body eventually can't keep up with that constant demand of high cortisol. So in an attempt to protect you, your brain stops signaling your adrenal glands to release cortisol altogether, leading to a state of overall low cortisol, which is often also called adrenal fatigue. And that is when you're constantly exhausted no matter how much rest you're getting. And so when that stress response is constantly activated, it can lead to anxiety, depression, heart problems, memory issues, weight gain, headaches, muscle tension, digestive issues, a weakened immune system, and the list goes on and on and on. So this once life-saving reaction has now turned into the cycle that is damaging our health. And the worst part is that we often don't even realize it's happening because it feels so normal nowadays. If you've learned something new so far, please give this video a thumbs up so YouTube can show it to other people that may benefit from this. And if you've learned 2 new things by the end of this video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me grow and it allows me to keep creating content like this for you for free. So now that we understood stress and the stress response, how can we now actually get addicted to it and even seek out stressful situations more than necessary? I mean, it sounds so counterintuitive, right? Like, who would actually want to voluntarily feel stressed out at all times? The truth is, more people than you think are hooked on that rush without even realizing it, which is why being addicted to stress is such a real thing. So how does this stress addiction happen? Well, it's all about that stress cocktail that we just talked about that your body is serving up every time you're stressed. So alongside the main ingredients, adrenaline and cortisol, your body also releases dopamine. So while adrenaline and cortisol get you all hyped up and ready to face whatever challenge you have on hand, dopamine is your feel-good hormone, the same feel-good chemical that lights up when you eat some chocolate or scroll through social media, which is there to give you that hit of pleasure. It's kind of like your brain's way of saying, hey, good job, we survived that. so that your body feels that reward when it completes a challenge and next time doesn't shy away from challenges. And that's where the addiction part sneaks in. Because it feels good, your brain wants more of it. And so over time, you can start craving that stress-induced dopamine hit. This is why some people always seem to be in overdrive, juggling a million things at once, or even creating drama just to feel that rush. So, like I said, stress in small doses, great. It's the kind that motivates you and makes you feel alive. But when you're constantly seeking out stress or finding it hard to relax even when things are calm, that's when it gets problematic. For some people, stress even becomes a familiar state, especially if they grew up in a chaotic, high-stress environment. So if you're used to being on high alert at all times, calmness can actually feel uncomfortable, maybe even unsafe. And so your body and mind get so used to those cortisol highs that when things are peaceful, it feels just weird or off. But not only people growing up in those high stress environments can get addicted to stress. This is because we live in a world that glorifies busyness and the hustle culture. You hear people bragging about how exhausted they are, how little they slept, or how many projects they're juggling. It's almost like stress has become the status symbol or a measure of productivity or success. So if you start equate stress with achievement or self-worth, it's no wonder that you would keep chasing it, right? The problem though is that the more you keep feeding that addiction, the more your body adapts. It gets used to pumping out cortisol and dopamine, and just like with any other addiction, you start needing more and more stress to get the same rush. This is why you might find yourself seeking out high-pressure situations or even feeling restless and bored when things are calm. It's like you're addicted to that adrenaline rush. And then over time, this messes with your sleep, your mood, your weight, your immune system, you name it. And when you're running on empty for too long, you end up in that adrenal fatigue that I explained earlier. It's like your body is finally hitting the brakes after running at full speed for way too long. Now, if you need more help with overcoming stress and cortisol addiction and want to get your physical and mental health back on track, then you can book a free clarity call with me using the link in the description where we can discuss how I can help you. And now, if you're still unsure, here are some questions to find out if you are addicted to stress. Ask yourself, do you feel uneasy when you have nothing to do? Do you find yourself overcommitting or taking on challenges just for the thrill? Do you struggle to relax even when everything's fine? The good news is, just like with any other addiction, we can break the cycle. So in the next two parts, we're going to dive into how to recognize the signs of stress addiction, where we're going to go through all the physical and mental and behavioral signs of stress addiction. And then in the last part, I'm going to give you all the actionable steps on how to stop stress addiction and recover from it. So if you don't want to miss that, subscribe now. And if you already can't wait and you want some actionable tips on how to reduce anxiety, stress, and overwhelm right now, then check out this video next, where I give you my 6 daily habits for mental health, stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you over there.